we have watched a new political situation arriving in the Netherlands over the last week, which is that Geert Wilders, and you'll know him very well, he is now trying to scramble together a coalition to create a right-wing Dutch coalition. Now, the leader of the Netherlands ruling Liberal Party has said it could support Geert Wilders becoming Prime Minister, but it wouldn't officially join his government. Dylan Yeşilgöz Zegerius, who's VVD, and I'm sure my next guest will correct me, give me a mark out of 10 about that pronunciation, who came third in Wednesday's Dutch election, said her party would only support a right-wing coalition from the sidelines in the hope of softening its policies. So I'm going to ask this question of Patrick Timms, who's a political commentator, an expert on the Netherlands, and indeed a Dutch translator to boot, whether actually the sword of Damocles on top of people who were firebrands in opposition now go, all right, it's a bit sobering to be the Prime Minister, I better calm down the old rhetoric, as we've seen with Giorgia Meloni in Italy with her language too, and now she's a friend of the European Union. She's on side with the Ukrainians as well, which didn't look on the card. So Patrick, a warm welcome. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to brush up my Dutch. And what is so fascinating about Dutch is that the quicker they speak it, the more you seem to be able to understand it if you're English.
Do you know, you're not the only person to say that.
Yeah, I sort of think, I know what they're saying. It sounds slightly scouse sometimes.
Well, I mean, for example, one of the parties that we're talking about here is a party that won 20 seats, is called Nieuw Sociaal Contract.
Ah.
Now, but you don't need a translation of that, do you?
You certainly don't. Yeah. And if you're from Liverpool, it's the new social contract. You see what I mean?
I will not be associated with that comparison.
No, sorry, I shouldn't do that. Shouldn't really do that. Now, so this is a very interesting thing. Now, of course, the European Union is not centre-right with the best will in the world, isn't it? You perhaps may say that it has a social democratic bent, and Geert Wilders would be the sort of man, without being in office, to talk about a sort of Netherlands Brexit, wouldn't he?
Well, he certainly would, and of course he certainly has. But of course, I will just turn back to the point that you made just earlier. That I mean, really, it's, you know, yes, he has in recent weeks he has toned down his rhetoric on banning Islam and banning mosques and that sort of thing, because he's very anti-Islam. Now, obviously, he's won this election only insofar, in the sense that he has the largest party, with 37 seats. So they have 150 seats in the Tweede Kamer, that is the second chamber. So the House of Commons, basically.
Yeah.
Now, you need 76 then, don't you? So he's got 37. Now, he is therefore the largest party, but it's nowhere near enough for a majority. Who else have we got? We've got what is probably the closest thing to the Labour Party over there, which is an alliance, actually, between the Partij van de Arbeid, the Labour Party, and GroenLinks, Green Left. They've got 25. And the
VVD?
Yeah. Volkspartij voor Vrijheid en Democratie. The People's Party for Freedom.
I love the pronunciations in Dutch.
Yeah, there you go, you see. Now, they were the party that was in government, of course. Yeah. And it was Mark Rutte, who was the Prime Minister.
Mark Rutte?
Yes, yeah. Who was the Minister-President, basically the Prime Minister.
And he's gone.
He's gone.
And the like of him has gone from Dutch politics too, hasn't
Well, it would seem so. And I'll tell you what's interesting about this. Obviously, his government collapsed in sort of June, July, I think it was July, over issues to do with immigration policy and whether or not we can grant, or they can grant, family reunion to certain types of immigrants. Now, they weren't able, because they always have coalition governments in the Netherlands, to form an agreement on that. And so Mark Rutte, he retired from politics completely. He's just gone. He's kind of done a Boris thus far, right? Now, then he's replaced by this lady, Dilan, and no, I can't correct your pronunciation on her surname, because she's Turkish.
She's Turkish, isn't she?
I don't know how you pronounce that. But
no.
Okay, so then she came in. Now, I think for her, actually, this story is... Well, I say this story, these developments are very interesting, because I think she was supposed to be the success story. You know what I mean? You know, a female immigrant leading a party that had been in power for well over a decade. You know, I think she was expecting to win this election. And instead, what do we have? We have Geert Wilders. Now, Geert Wilders is, for any viewers who don't know, he's pretty much the Dutch equivalent of Nigel Farage, is basically what he is. So this is a bit like if Nigel Farage made a political return, which he has hinted at, and came back.
On ITV about every night.
Yes, and actually won some sort of, if not a majority, but like the largest party, maybe with the former Brexit party, now Reform UK. You know, this is what that's like. This is how seismic this is. But actually, how seismic is it? Because he can't really form a majority at this point without the support of the VVD, which he isn't going to do. I mean, people like D66, they're not going to support him, I don't think. There are various people, maybe. There are various other parties. There's Nieuw Sociaal Contract. They might. But that still leaves him short of 76 seats. So it is possible here, and I will shut up in a second, but it is possible here that what actually happened is the Dutch have effectively voted themselves to have no Prime Minister for a while.
Because we have this sort of logjam in the Netherlands' neighbour, Belgium, where they take ages to create a coalition. We have a similar situation in Israel, which always leads to another election. They had a real spate of them, didn't they?
They did.
So there's another way that a populist leader could play this, couldn't he? Because he won the election, but then he may not end up being the Prime Minister, and then still use the rhetoric, the actual electoral franchise of being, well, I won this election, but I'd rather talk from the sidelines and be a coalition member rather than be the boss.
Well, I mean, that's all he's...
Is that possible?
Well, that's all he's used to, isn't it? Now, what he has actually said is the other parties, they need to over zijn eigen schaduw heen springen, which is to leap over their own shadow, literally. Okay, so he's saying, look, come on, guys. He said, we're going to govern. I'm going to be the Prime Minister. The trouble is that he can say that all he likes. You know, if he doesn't get the support of the others. Now, as you were just saying earlier, the toning down of the rhetoric. So where did they find a balance in the middle? But the key point here is that all of these other major parties, anyway, have always said that it's kind of like a cardinal rule in Dutch politics. Nobody will work with Geert Wilders. Nobody will do it. Now, you may have to have a toning down of that rhetoric as well.
Indeed.
You know, now maybe they're going to have to, because unless they do that, they're going to have to do when did we have this? October 70? Whenever it was, 1974 sometime, when we had 2 elections in 1 year.
In this country?
Yes, in this country.
Yes.
Which was really practically unprecedented. You know, so the reality that the Dutch politics now faces is that unless they're willing to do that, or something similar to that, they're going to have to find a way of accepting this situation. And I think it's too early to say just who is actually going to be willing to do that. Now, they have already started coalition talks. But another point I'll just mention, because I think you wanted to talk about how this would affect Europe as well, the rest of Europe. Yes. Well, OK, so let's just compare it to France, where you have Marine Le Pen. But they have a presidential system. So if she gets in, she is the president. She can command authority because she is the president. She will then appoint a prime minister and a cabinet. But that's not the way the Dutch electoral system works. So you can win the election, all you like, but actually if you can't get any support behind you, then, as I said earlier, effectively the Dutch have just voted themselves not to have a government.
This is the thing. I wanted to bring up the French because, as you say, when you're the president, you are the king. And in France, I just really am a bit concerned that this situation will lead to upheaval right across Western Europe. We have Vincent Bolloré's CNews, and he's the kind of boss of the self-funded organisation, which is, again, a sort of an outlier of news provision, like a lot of news organisations in this country as well, and it's gaining popularity. And we have seen fault lines in Macron's recent rhetoric, where he has surprised a lot of people with his volte-face on various policies and things, and you think, oh, he's going down here, leaving people who may not have voted for Marine Le Pen in the past because they thought she was a bit salty, looking over at Holland, their near neighbours, and thinking, well, maybe it's time for us to vote for this, maybe this isn't scary, and bringing to an end the, should we say, political superiority of the centre-left, the social democratic European Union. Times they are a-changing.
Well, they are, and let's be honest. I mean, you've got right-wing populist parties in power in Poland, in Hungary. So, if we look to the east,
well, the east is quite politically different, isn't it? But we're now talking about the west here.
Yes, but what I'm talking about is the composition of that within the European Union,
right?
Because they are within the European Union. You see,
yes,
you're quite right. It's a very different political scene, but yeah, there is precedent. Yes, so I think if I understand the point you're making correctly, what you're saying is that, you know, actually maybe this is spreading towards
the west,
towards the west. And what's going to happen then? I mean, Germany is another big one. But, I mean, whatever they're called, Alternative for Deutschland, they don't seem to be getting too far. I mean,
they've got a bit of a history to deal with here.
Well, I think perhaps the less said about that, the better. But yes, you're quite right. Of course they do. Now, we've had populist governments in Spain before. We've also had them in Italy. Okay, you know, so it's not the case that any of this is impossible. I think what this result shows, and what it really comes down to, is that this is a country that actually has quite a high population density, has taken on many migrants due to the same crisis that we've been facing, or similar. They don't have, you know, a sea border to cross as such. And then you look at this, and of course, recently there was the what was referred to as the Dutch farmers' crisis, wasn't there? So where the government was trying to take land away from people, and you had a whole new party, the Boerburgerbeweging, whatever it was. I think it's sort of the farmer citizen movement. They've won 7 seats in this election, up from 1. Okay, so I think it looks to me as though the Dutch population in general is fed up, and that's something that Wilders said. He said we're spuugzat with this. We're really fed up to the back teeth, you know, with this. And hey, you look at the result. Now, with that said, this is some people might compare it to the result of the Brexit referendum. You know, and people just being basically fed up for a whole wide range of reasons. But we've got that going on over there now as well.
Patrick Timms, thank you very much indeed for... It's great to talk about the Netherlands. You know, we don't often do that on the show, but this is a moment of sea change in Europe. It certainly feels like it. Patrick, thank you very much for joining us.